I wasn't supposed to be on that ridge after dark. The trail guide at the ranger station kept repeating it like a warning he had said too many times before, like he had seen people ignore it and never come back the same, but I still went. I told myself it was just another mountain trail, just another quiet night walk where the only danger was slipping on wet rock. That confidence didn't last long. The first thing I noticed was how the forest got too quiet too quickly, like someone had turned the sound down instead of the world naturally fading into night. Even my footsteps felt wrong, too soft against the stone path, like the ground was trying not to answer me back. The deeper I went, the more it felt like I wasn't walking into nature anymore, but into something that had been waiting in the shape of nature. Then I heard it. A single sound above me, rock sliding slowly down the slope. Not a normal landslide, not wind, not loose gravel. It was controlled, deliberate, like something had just shifted its weight up there in the dark. I stopped immediately and looked up toward the ridgeline, but all I could see were trees packed tightly together, their branches barely moving, like even they didn't want to point in the wrong direction. Then it happened again, another side, closer this time. And this time it wasn't just sound, I felt it. A vibration through the ground beneath my boots, like something heavy had adjusted its position above me and was now paying attention. That's when I first thought about turning back, but the moment I shifted my weight to leave, I realized something worse. There were no returning footsteps behind me, only silence. And somewhere above the ridge, between the trees I couldn't properly see anymore, something had started moving down toward me without making the forest react at all. I told myself it was just nerves, that my mind was turning normal mountain sounds into something worse because of the silence and the darkness pressing in from all sides. Down the ridge, that's when I noticed the footprints. Mine were there, clear in the dust and broken stone, but something else had begun marking the ground alongside them. Not full prints, not consistent shapes, just disturbed patches of earth, as if something had been dragging itself down from above rather than walking on the path. I stopped again, and the forest didn't stop with me. A second later, another sound came from the ridge above, rocks shifting, rolling, sliding in a controlled chain reaction. It wasn't random anymore. It felt targeted, like something was testing how close it could get without revealing itself fully. I pulled out my flashlight and pointed it upward. The beam cut through the trees, but it didn't behave normally. It should have scattered across branches and leaves. Instead, parts of it seemed to disappear into the darkness like it was being absorbed. Then I saw movement between two trees, high on the slope. Something was there, too still to be wind, too deliberate to be falling debris. The shape was crouched in a way that didn't match anything natural. Its outline didn't sit properly in the environment, like the forest couldn't decide how to hold it in place. And then I made the mistake of focusing on its eyes. 2 points of light, steady and fixed, locked directly onto me without hesitation. Not searching, not noticing, already waiting. My flashlight flickered once, and in that single blink of instability, the shape had changed position. Closer, much closer than it had any right to be. I stepped back without thinking, and the moment my boot hit the loose stone, the entire ridge answered with a sudden cascade of rolling rocks above me. Not a natural slide, not random erosion. It came in short bursts, like something was deliberately dropping weight from different points on the slope to force me into movement. I tried to steady myself, but my flashlight beam started shaking again, and every time it passed over the trees, it felt like something was briefly standing inside the light and then vanishing the instant I tried to focus on it. Then I heard breathing, not behind me, not ahead of me, above me, too close to be safe, too low to be wind. I raised the flashlight again, slower this time, forcing myself to lock the beam in one direction. The ridgeline came into view, jagged and broken, with trees leaning over the slope like they were trying to look down at me without fully committing. And there it was again, the shape. Except now it wasn't just watching. It was moving down, not walking, not climbing, sliding, like it didn't need the ground the same way I did. The rocks around it started shifting in small synchronized bursts as if the mountain itself was reacting to its movement. And for the first time I noticed something worse than its presence. It wasn't coming down the ridge toward me. It was positioning itself above every possible path I could take, cutting off the direction before I even chose. I turned sharply to leave, but the trail behind me no longer looked the same. The path I had just walked was there, but it felt rearranged. Rocks that were on my left were now on my right. A fallen branch that should have been behind me was suddenly ahead, as if I had stepped into a version of the ridge that had shifted slightly out of alignment with my memory. I stopped walking completely. The forest didn't. Another rock slid started above me, but this time it wasn't just sound or movement, it was coordinated. Multiple points along the ridge were releasing debris in sequence, like something was testing how I reacted to pressure from different directions. Then I saw it drop lower. Not fully visible yet, but closer to the tree line now. The shape was clearer than before, too long for a normal animal, its body angled wrong against gravity, like it didn't rely on balance the same way anything natural should. It moved in short, impossible shifts, appearing a few feet lower each time I blinked. I raised my flashlight again, but my hands were no longer steady. The beam hit the trees, and for a brief moment I saw what shouldn't have been possible: multiple sets of glowing eyes scattered across different points of the slope, all aligned toward me, all perfectly still. And then they moved, not together, not randomly, in sequence, like they were learning exactly where I would look next. That's when I understood the ridge wasn't above me anymore. It was surrounding me. I started moving again, faster this time, trying to leave the ridge before whatever was above me fully committed to coming down. But the moment I increased my pace, the forest responded like it had been waiting for that exact decision. The rocks above began falling in tighter patterns, not random slides anymore, but controlled pressure points, small bursts of movement placed just ahead of where I was stepping. I had to keep adjusting my direction, and every adjustment made the terrain feel less like a path and more like a trap being shaped in real time. My flashlight caught something again, briefly, between two trees on the slope above. It was lower, much lower. Now it wasn't just near the ridgeline. It was entering the space where trees started thinning out, where the mountain began to open toward the walking path. I could finally see its shape more clearly, and that clarity made it worse. It wasn't running. It didn't need to. It was sliding down in controlled drops, appearing lower each time the shadows broke around it, like gravity was optional for it but still obeyed when it chose. And every time it moved, the forest reacted first. Branches twisted, slightly before it passed them. Stones shifted before its weight even reached them, like the environment was not witnessing it, but anticipating it. I tried to shine the light directly at it, but the beam kept slipping off its form as the space around it refused to stay stable long enough for a full image to lock in. Then it stopped completely, right above the trail, perfectly still, and for the first time, I felt it wasn't positioning itself alone above me anymore. It was choosing where I would be next. I reached a break in the ridge where the trees opened slightly, a narrow flat stretch that looked almost safe compared to everything behind me. I didn't think, I just ran into it, desperate for even a few seconds where the ground didn't feel like it was actively shifting under something else's control. For a moment, there was only silence. No sliding rocks, no shifting branches. Even my own breathing felt too loud in that stillness. That's when I saw the cabin. It wasn't on my map. It shouldn't have been there at all. I sat just off the trail, half hidden between two thick tree lines, its wooden frame dark and weathered like it had been sitting there long before anyone built the forest around it. A single light flickered inside, warm, alive, safe. At least that's what my mind wanted it to be. I pushed toward it immediately, convincing myself I had found help, or at least shelter from whatever was following me on the ridge. My boots hit the wooden steps hard and I reached for the door without hesitation. It was already slightly open. I stepped inside and the silence followed me in. The light inside wasn't comforting up close. It was dim, uneven, and it didn't fully reach the corners of the room, like the cabin was bigger on the inside than it should have been. The air felt still in a way that made my skin tighten immediately. I turned slowly, expecting emptiness, but the room wasn't empty. Something had already been there long enough to leave a presence behind it. And outside, just beyond the walls, I heard the sound of rocks shifting again, closer than before. The moment I realized I wasn't alone inside the cabin, the air changed. It didn't happen suddenly like a jump scare. It was slower, heavier, like the room itself had just noticed I was paying attention. The light in the corner flickered once and the shadows along the walls seemed to lean inward, tightening around the space like something was listening from inside them. I didn't move at first because I already felt it, not behind me, not outside, inside the room with me. I slowly turned my head, scanning the corners of the cabin, trying to find anything that made sense, but the more I looked, the more the space felt wrong. Too many angles that didn't align, too much depth for a structure this small. The wooden walls didn't feel like boundaries anymore. They felt like layers. Then I saw it, sitting near the far side of the cabin, partially hidden in shadow like it had been there for long before I entered. The Wampus Cat, not entering, not arriving, already inside. Its body didn't fit the space properly. It bent where it shouldn't bend, stretched where it should have been confined. The floorboards beneath it didn't creak, didn't react, like even weight refused to register it correctly, and its eyes were locked on me without hesitation. Not curiosity, no delay. Like I had walked into something that had already finished deciding what I was. I stepped back instinctively, but the cabin didn't give me space to retreat the way it should have. My heel hit the wooden floor behind me too quickly, like the room had already shortened the distance without me noticing. The door behind me creaked. It didn't remember it being closed. I also didn't remember it being open anymore. The Wampus Cat didn't move from its position, but the air around it felt like it was advancing anyway, not through motion, but through certainty, like its presence alone was compressing the room toward me in slow increments. I tried to speak, to call out, to do anything that would break the silence, but my throat locked halfway through the attempt. No sound came out, not even a breath of voice, just air that refused to become words. The cabin responded to that silence. The walls shifted again, barely visible, but real enough that I felt it. Wood tightening, corners narrowing, the space slowly adapting to something inside it that didn't belong to human scale anymore. The cat tilted its head slightly. That was the first real movement it made since I saw it. And in that tilt, I understood something worse than its presence. It wasn't observing me, it was mirroring me. Like the room, like the space, like everything around it was being adjusted around the idea of what I could still do before I couldn't anymore. I forced myself toward the window because standing still felt worse than moving, even if every instinct in my body was screaming that moving might be exactly what it wanted. The glass was cold when I touched it, too cold. Not like normal night air, but like something that hadn't been warmed by life in a long time. Outside, the forest should have been visible. It was, but not the way I remembered it. The trees were all facing the cabin now, not swaying, not reacting to wind, pointed. Every single one angled inward like the entire forest had turned its attention toward this small structure and decided to stay there. I pulled my hand back slowly, but my reflection stayed on the glass longer than it should have. And in that reflection, I saw something behind me that I hadn't heard move. The Wampus Cat was no longer just sitting, it was closer, not crossing distance, just appearing in reduced space, as if the room had shrunk around it instead of it moving forward. I turned sharply. It was still in the same place, but somehow also closer. And the worst part was the realization settling in. The cabin wasn't containing it. It was concentrating it. The space itself was folding inward around both of us, making every direction feel smaller, every second feel tighter, like the environment was preparing for something final without telling me what it was. And outside, the forest didn't move at all. It just kept watching. I backed away from the window, but the glass reflection still stayed in my mind like it had burned itself in. The forest outside wasn't just watching anymore. It felt organized, like every tree had taken a position and was holding it deliberately. I turned again toward the door. It was there, still shut, but I hadn't heard it close, and I couldn't remember the last time I saw it open clearly. That thought made my chest tighten. The Wampus Cat didn't react to my movement. It didn't need to. It was already positioned exactly where I would end up looking, no matter how I turned. The cabin felt smaller now, not physically shrinking in a visible way, but in how much space I was allowed to mentally occupy. I moved fast toward the door and pulled it hard. It didn't budge, not locked, not stuck, just unresponsive, like the idea of leaving wasn't part of the cabin's structure anymore. A low sound rolled through the floorboards then, subtle, controlled, like something heavy adjusting to position underneath the wood without breaking it. I froze. And in that stillness, I realized the truth was no longer outside the cabin. There was no outside anymore, because the forest view through the window had changed again. The trees weren't just facing inward now. They were closer, too close. Like the cabin itself had moved without me noticing. Behind me, the Wampus Cat shifted for the second time, and this time, I didn't need to turn to know it was no longer where it started. I stopped trying the door after the third pull, not because I gave up, because my body suddenly understood something my mind was still resisting. This wasn't a door problem, it was a reality problem. The wood under my hand felt different now, like it had aged a few minutes in seconds, darkening slightly in places that hadn't been there before. The cabin wasn't just closing off escape, it was normalizing the idea that escape was never part of it. Behind me, the Wampus Cat shifted again. This time I felt it. Not saw it, felt it. Like the air pressure in the room adjusted to accommodate a new position. I didn't turn immediately because turning felt like agreeing to whatever rule was being set inside this space, but the silence made it impossible to ignore. No creaking, no breathing, just presence. I finally looked. It was closer, not dramatically, not in a visible leap, just enough that the distance between us no longer felt like across the room, but something more compressed, like the cabin had quietly removed space from between us while I wasn't paying attention. Its eyes stayed locked on me, steady and unmoving, but the rest of it felt less stable now, like the longer I observed it, the more it refused to stay consistent in shape. The cabin responded to that observation too. The walls tightened again, barely noticeable, but real enough that I felt my shoulders brush space that hadn't been there before, and then I understood the pattern forming. Every time I acknowledged it, the room reduced me. I take one step back without thinking. My heel doesn't meet the floor the way it should. There's less space than before, not missing, just removed. The cabin feels like it has finally decided there's no more room left for me to negotiate with. Behind me, I hear nothing, and that silence is worse than any movement, because now I know it doesn't need sound anymore. I force myself to turn away anyway, slow, against every instinct I still have left. The Wampus Cat is close enough now that the distance stops feeling like distance. It feels like placement, like I've been positioned exactly where I always meant to stand. Its eyes don't blink, they don't search, they confirm, and in that confirmation, I feel the cabin do something final, like it has finished adjusting everything inside it around a single point. Me. The floor feels higher, the ceiling feels lower, the walls feel closer without moving visibly, and I realize the worst part isn't that I am trapped. It's that I can't tell when I became part of the trap. The Wampus Cat shifts one last time, and this time, there is no space left to measure it by. Only me, only it. And the moment before whatever happens next, everything inside the cabin goes completely still.